Hello everyone. Welcome back to the buy-in case. One of the most surprising things in 2024 is that in 24 years, a historical novel movie has been released. In order to let you enjoy such a wonderful movie at the first time, RK also worked overtime to make it. Without further ado, let's take a look at case number 151 of the Action Zone. The God-Ghost War II, also known as the Battle of 200 years ago, General Hanno and his wife lived a peaceful life. However, on this day, there was a sudden alarm in the air. The city walls were also on fire. The Roman general Cassius led a naval fleet to attack. King Juguda urgently gathered men from all over the country to resist the invaders. Although it was clear that the enemy's power was weak, the Numidians were not afraid at all. They were all gathered on the front line. Hanno, on the other hand, seemed to have an unresolved hatred for the Romans. The fleet was forced to retreat. The soldiers threw out their torches and began the first round of resistance. The Romans also attacked with bows and arrows. The war broke out in an instant. As the bridge was lowered, Cassius was the first to climb the city wall. The situation became a fierce battle. Although the Numidian soldiers fought hard to resist, their power was still too weak. They were soon defeated by the Roman army. Hanno's wife was also shot by an arrow in the chaos. Hanno saw this, his mind was blank for a moment, and he was caught by the enemy and hit by the city wall. In a moment of confusion, Hanno came to the Inyang Junction, staring at his wife being taken to the other side of the Ming River. He shouted to stop, but there was nothing he could do. In great pain, Hanno woke up in the sea. At this time, the war was over, and there were corpses everywhere on the beach. Hanno tried hard to find his dead wife, but at the next moment, he was captured by the Roman soldiers. Cassius ordered people to gather all the bodies in the wilderness. In the cry of Numidian people angry with despair, a fire was set on. Hanno and other captives came to the square, printed a humiliating seal, and became slaves of the Romans. They were later taken into the shipwreck and transported to Rome. On the way, Hanno found King Juguda. He broke his arm in the battle, but compared to the pain of the body, the humiliation and hatred of the king of the country had made Juguda soulless. He was ready to die, but he still warned Hanno, "Even if you become a slave, don't change your mind." These words dragged Hanno into a whirlpool of memories. He was chased by Roman soldiers when he was young, and he fled everywhere in North Africa. The old man who adopted Hanno once told him, no matter what, he can't fall into the hands of the Romans. But he didn't expect to come back to Rome. Soon after, Hanno was crowned, and the Roman people welcomed him and celebrated their hero's return. King Juguda and Hanno also came to the court, and dressed Hanno in person. In order to celebrate the expansion of the empire, Juguda decided to hold a competition in the battlefield. But the constant battles have made Hanno heartbroken, and he only wants to return home and spend the rest of his life with his wife. However, Juguda's ambition has not been fulfilled yet. He drew his sword directly and put it on Cassius's shoulder, and ordered him to conquer Persia and India for himself. This made Cassius displeased, but he didn't dare to attack on the spot. At the same time, Hanno and others were brought to the Antium battlefield outside Rome, and the first show began here. The slave master Marcus Aurelius came to appreciate. He is now the richest businessman in Rome, and he almost sponsored half of the army's weapons and equipment. As Marcus sat down, the slaves walked into the battlefield with their armor. Hanno protected Juguda from being hurt by the king, but he did not expect that his opponent was not a human, but a long-hungry ghost, Feifei. In order to make the battle more exciting, the workers also shot a needle into Feifei's body, further stimulating their urge to save the empire. But at the moment of life and death, Juguda knelt alone on the ground and did not resist, letting Feifei bite off his neck. He would rather die than become a plaything of the Romans. Hanno saw this and was very angry. He beat Feifei away to save Juguda. Unexpectedly, Feifei was fierce, with a big mouth again. In the end, Hanno had to fight with him to the death. He was pressed by Feifei, and his heart was hurt by his opponent's arm. Then he grabbed the opportunity to use an iron chain to tie Feifei's neck, and snatched his life. This fierce style successfully aroused Marcus's interest. He decided to buy this good seed. In this way, Hanno and other slaves were brought to Marcus's training ground and officially became a fighter. In order to test his skills, Marcus ordered him to fight with the instructor. Hanno did not want to care, but was knocked down by the instructor. He was furious, and set up a good posture to fight back. After adjusting his condition, Hanno stabbed the instructor in the arm. This made Marcus excited, realizing that this time he had picked up the treasure. He knew that Hanno was a perfect warrior, but he also saw the hatred in his eyes. So he tried to find out how to calm his anger. Unexpectedly, Hanno said directly, "I want Acacios's head." Although Marcus was depressed, he soon realized that it was Acacios who killed Hanno's family. He promised him that as long as he worked for himself, one day he would cut Acacios's head with his own hands. But Hanno did not know that Acacios's heart was also very painful. He went home to find his wife, Lucia, showing that he did not want to hear the love of innocent people anymore, and did not want to have young people fight to death for the glory of two tyrants. Acacios now just wants to fight the last battle, which is to overthrow the autocratic rule and return Rome to the people. Lucia is the daughter of the former king, and she can't stand what the two kings are doing, so she asked her husband when he was ready. Acacios did not hide, and told her that his army would launch an attack on the last day of the competition. The Roman high-ranking officials who did not know about this were still in love. Marcus brought Hanno to the palace and let him fight with the Celis, a member of the nursing home. The two sides planned to fight to the end, but unexpectedly, Acacios directly sent a sword and ordered Acacios to kill him. Hanno also wanted to persuade the fighter in front of him, but the opponent did not listen at all, so Acacios killed him. Hanno was so angry that she tried her best to stab the man in the stomach. Seeing that he was so strong, Geta's temper was raised and took the initiative to ask Hanno's origin. But Hanno did not answer, but recited a poem by Vigil, which surprised Acacios and gave him the nickname of a poet. And because the two kings were in a good mood, Marcus rewarded Hanno with 2 gold coins and said that as long as he earned enough money, he would be able to redeem his freedom, because that's how he got here. At the same time, Hanno entered the secret room, and several members of the nursing home were waiting for him. Acacios opened the door, and said that he called them here tonight to take back Rome. Members of the nursing home also cried and said yes, except that Celis hesitated, thinking that this plan was very risky. But because of the attitude of the people around him, he had no choice but to answer coldly that as long as Lucilla gets the throne, she will naturally get the support of the nursing home. The next day was the start of the competition. Hanno and his companions were taken to Rome. The people on the roadside are the people who pray for the dead. They are only 1 wall from the top of the jade stone, but seem to be deep into 2 worlds. As the 2 kings arrived, Acacios and Lucilla also came to the coronation, but he was called by Geta to give a speech in front of him. Acacios could not retreat, so he said to all the citizens that what Rome needs most now is courage. After the speech, Hanno and his companions walked into the arena. Their opponent was the destroyer riding a rhinoceros. Hanno quickly thought of a countermeasure and told his companions to attract the rhinoceros to the wall, but a man did not want to listen to his orders and ran away as soon as he saw the rhinoceros chasing him. As a result, he was tied to his legs and his legs were pierced through his stomach. Seeing this situation, Hanno realized that he could not be careless, so he put his sword by his side and sat down to grab a handful of sand. This scene made Lucilla think of a legendary figure many years ago, and the 2 kings also recognized Hanno below and read the poem he recited yesterday, but they did not find that Lucilla's face had changed a lot, and it was obvious that she had remembered Hanno's identity. But now is not the time to say this. The rhinoceros came running with a roar. Hanno quickly raised the sand and successfully bewitched his eyes so that he could not kill himself, but the destroyer on the top attacked at random. Although Hanno had a shield to resist, he was still knocked down by the opponent. The destroyer picked up his sword and waited for the 2 kings to order the execution. But because the people on the scene shouted for mercy, Geta also wanted to see what kind of surprise Hanno would bring, so he raised his thumb and decided to forgive him. But Hanno did not want to accept this humiliating mercy, and took up his weapon to resist and successfully pierced the destroyer. He cut his sword in 2, and his head fell to the ground. He immediately set the atmosphere of the battleground on fire and shouted Hanno's name out loud. When the game was over, Hanno returned to the resting area, and Dr. Ravel took the initiative to kill the destroyer. At the same time, Lucilla returned to her room alone. The poem recited by Hanno still echoed in her ears, evoking painful memories that she buried in her heart. It turned out that Hanno was the son of Lucilla and the legendary fighter Maximus. After Maximus died with the tyrant Commodus, Hanno became the only heir to the throne. But people around her ignored her power. Lucilla could not protect her son, and had to send him away in pain. I didn't expect to see her again today. Lucilla dared not go to Hanno without permission, so she called Maximus and asked him where his fighters came from. Although Lucilla's behavior was very natural, it still aroused Mark's suspicion. She found a good friend, and learned that Lucilla had a son. He disappeared after the king was killed. If he was still alive, he should be in his prime now. This surprised Mark, and there was a suspicion in his heart. Lucilla, who did not know the secret, could not contain her longing, and took the risk with the help of a member. Seeing Hanno, who had grown up, Lucilla was anxious. But Hanno had not seen her mother for many years, and had no feelings for her mother, let alone killing her wife for Cassius. Now Hanno only has hatred in her heart, saying that the boy who was sent away was already dead, and that he was just a fighter without family. This indifferent speech made Lucilla heartbroken. She did not ask Hanno to forgive her, but only hoped that she could inherit her father's strong and brave will. The member urged Lucilla to leave as soon as possible, and when she returned home, Lucilla met Cassius waiting in the yard. She no longer concealed, but happily mentioned that Hanno was her son. But Cassius obviously thought more. The competition was getting more and more dangerous, and no one could guarantee how long Hanno would last. This made Lucilla very anxious and asked her husband to help Hanno. Seeing that her son was emotionally out of control, Cassius had to decide to start the rebellion in advance. But the two did not find that their conversation was clearly heard by the maid in the corner. The next day, there was a head-to-head battle between Hanno and Cassius. The large stadium was filled with seawater, and there was a shark down there. The two sides took warships and tried to restore the Salamis that the ancient Greek fleet defeated the Persian navy. Before Hanno and the others got close, the enemy fired rockets. Once someone fell into the water, it would instantly become a shark's food. But even so, everyone was not timid and rushed to the enemy under Hanno's command, destroying the enemy's shipwreck so that it could not move and became a food for the shark. Seeing this, Hanno ordered his companion to turn around and hit the enemy. At the same time, Hanno threw a sword and killed the enemy. In the chaos, Hanno picked up his bow and aimed at Cassius and decided to avenge his wife. But he was knocked down by an enemy and shot into the center of the throne. Geta was scared and shouted to call for the guards. The host also announced that Hanno won another victory. At the same time, Hanno's prestige reached the peak. When the instructor Hanno asked to attack the watchtower, all the fighters stopped the criminal and made the instructor helpless. He could only warn that Geta would not give up easily. At the same time, Cassius' servant secretly found Celis and told him the news that they were going to rebel tonight. Soon after, he rushed into Celis' house and mentioned that Celis had gone bankrupt in order not to be kicked out. Celis had to tell Hanno the secret of Cassius. That night, Cassius, whose plan was exposed, led a group of men to the battlefield to save Hanno first. Unexpectedly, a large number of archers had already been ambushed. In the middle of the night, all the men were killed and Cassius was the only one left. While he was arrested, the guards knocked on the door and took away Lucilla, who was anxiously waiting at home. At dawn, Cassius and Lucilla were taken to the palace. Geta was furious with the betrayal of the two and Caracara was emotionally out of control. He decided to kill them on the spot. Geta led the men to take Cassius and Lucilla away and then called Macri to the front and announced that he was the one he trusted the most. Macri took the opportunity to persuade Geta that Cassius was a Roman hero and that the sudden execution would definitely arouse the people's anger. It was better to put him in the battlefield and let the gods decide his fate. The next day, Cassius and Lucilla were chatting when he noticed a man's name on the wall. He learned that it was his father, Macri. Lucilla saw that Cassius was in a low mood and secretly took him to the deeper part of the battlefield. Here were buried the fighters who resisted the power. On the wall were the weapons of Macri. Cassius had no idea what was going on. Just when he was about to cry, the battle began. In order to prevent another attack, Geta sent a large number of guards to guard the audience and locked Lucilla on the platform to force her to witness her husband's death. As the host read Cassius' sentence, the 4 soldiers raised their swords to salute the hero. Cassius took the lead and used his sharp sword to kill the 4 soldiers. Lucilla was relieved. But when she heard the next opponent's name, she cried. It was Hanno who won both battles. Hanno rushed into the battlefield and wanted to kill Cassius to avenge his wife's death. Cassius saw that he had lost his mind and had to throw away the weapon. When Hanno was exhausted, Cassius called his childhood name and knelt down to apologize for his defeat. Geta pointed his finger and ordered the execution. Hanno looked at Cassius and expressed his respect for Marcus and Lucilla. He just hoped that he would not let his parents down. Hanno's heart was moved. He also knelt in front of Cassius and decided to let go of his hatred. Hanno openly disobeyed his order. Geta was furious and hurriedly ordered the archers to shoot. With the sound of the arrow, Geta aimed at Cassius' back and shot him in the back. Cassius' body was covered with blood. A Roman hero died in the battlefield. Lucilla was in great pain and cursed the 2 kings in front of her. Hanno was also furious and asked all the citizens if this was the Roman way to treat heroes. This soul quest aroused everyone's dissatisfaction and scared the guards to shoot the people who were about to lose control. Hanno was driven out of the battlefield, but his influence had already begun to ferment. That night, the angry people surrounded the palace and asked the 2 kings to give an explanation. Geta and Cassius don't know what to do and hide in the house. Cassius and Lucilla blamed each other. Cassius' pet monkey kept screaming and made Geta upset and poured wine out of the cup and spilled it all over his brother's face. Lucilla persuaded Cassius to calm down and asked the other what was going on. Cassius didn't know Lucilla's purpose and thought she was here to help. Lucilla told Cassius her dissatisfaction, and Cassius decided to hand her over and calm the people down. Cassius panicked and didn't say a word because the seed of contradiction had already been planted. Cassius took a knife and stabbed his brother. When they were about to die, Cassius appeared and held Cassius' hand and slid over Geta's neck. There was only one person left. Cassius gathered the whole nursing home and declared himself the only king of Rome and appointed the pet monkey as the first governor. Everyone was shocked and didn't know what he had done wrong. Cassius turned around and appointed the second governor. Everyone knew what had happened. Cassius took the lead and saluted Cassius. When Cassius left, Cassius took off Geta's head and announced he would be in charge and ordered the nursing home to vote. Everyone knew Cassius' ambition and that he had succeeded. The nursing home accepted Cassius' offer under the leadership of Therese. The 2 princes felt their time had come. Meanwhile, Lucilla was still trying to resist. She asked Hanno to give Cassius' ring to her and told her about the plan. Hanno forgave Lucilla. She took the ring and hugged her tightly. Lucilla was brought to Cassius' room. Cassius took off his clothes and revealed the mark on his chest. He was once Lucilla's father's slave. Since then, Cassius had to take the lead. Now, Cassius had only one obstacle left: Lucilla's mother. She decided to execute Lucilla and kill Hanno. Cassius didn't know that Hanno had already taken action. She called Ravel to the front to show his identity as a Roman prince and told him to give the ring to Cassius' army and the key to the nursing home. Ravel rushed into the camp and heard Hanno's name. He understood that it was time to attack. When the city was in chaos, the officer found Hanno and threw a wooden sword that symbolized freedom and told him that as long as he protected his mother, he would no longer be a slave. Hanno pushed open the prison door and took the sword. The rest of the fighters rushed out to fight and quickly took care of the guards. Hanno entered the next room and put on his father's armor and started the battle to liberate Rome. At the same time, Lucilla and those who helped her were brought to the center of the battlefield. Hanno was surrounded by the guards as soon as he stepped forward. As he raised his sword, all the fighters rushed in. The situation was in chaos and even the officer lost control. Macri ordered his soldiers to eliminate the rebellion, but he knew that the city was under attack, so he had to turn to the main force. After that, Macri lost his patience and pulled out a steel nail and stabbed Caracalla in the chest of Lucilla. Hanno was furious and rushed out of the battlefield. He found that Macri had left and grabbed a black horse to start the pursuit. At that moment, the soldiers of Acacios had arrived at the gate of Romulus. Macri came to the front and Hanno followed him. She showed her identity in front of everyone, which made Macri angry. He didn't expect that Hanno would break his plan, which had been planned for a long time. They pulled out their swords and started a fight to decide the future of Romulus. Although Macri had lived in the city for many years, he was a fighter and he was very good at fighting. He kicked Hanno into the water and stabbed her several times. Hanno's armor was pierced and Macri didn't break his defense but was crushed by Hanno's stone. Hanno's sword cut off Macri's arm and then she used her strength to take his life. After killing Macri, Hanno said loudly to the guards that she didn't want anyone to die because of the tyranny of Macri. She wanted to turn Romulus into a home where everyone is welcome. The guards collected their weapons and announced their loyalty. Everything was settled. Hanno came back to the battlefield and achieved her goal but lost all her family. She could only move forward. Hanno was confused because she was no longer a fighter but the king of the Roman Empire. God of War 2 is an action movie released in 2024. If we evaluate this movie with a 5-star rating, RK thinks that the role is 5 stars. As a story based on real historical changes, every character in the movie has a lot of blood and flesh. Especially Denzel Washington, who plays Macri, a ruthless and cruel hero. The plot is 4 stars. There is no doubt that this movie is a historical drama. At the beginning, the Roman Empire's external expansion led to the end of the civilized world and the battle. In addition, the 2 main lines of the palace conspiracy and the prince's revenge make the whole story extremely full. There are too many comments on the internet about this movie. RK is just showing off here. I don't know what you think about this movie. Welcome to leave a comment in the comment area. Okay.